Hi there. In this week's edition of The Wrap, we're looking at how, of all things, the vaccine hesitancy is scuppering our war on COVID. Plus, we explain the mess in Afghanistan and why you should care. Then there's the good news for democracy in Zambia and right here with the Zondo Commission. So let's dive into your weekly news update brought to you by Verashni Pillay and the explain.co.za team. First up is our take, the war for hearts and minds. From tomorrow, all adult South Africans are eligible, 18 years and up, for the vaccine. Incredible, right? But how is this for irony? South Africans have been desperate for the vaccine rollout to happen, and now that it has, they're not showing up. It turned out the real fight wasn't with Big Pharma or an inept government strategies. It was over hearts and minds, and skepticism is winning a dangerous war. Only about 7% of the eligible population has been vaccinated to date, but many vaccine sites are deserted and the number of daily inoculations are dropping. Discovery says the daily vaccination rate has halved. Survey after survey has shown that South Africans are hesitant. Interestingly enough, the latest one showed that vaccine hesitancy is most pronounced amongst white adults in South Africa. The proportion of black respondents who were willing to get a shot rose to 75% from 69% in the previous survey. But amongst white adults, it fell 4 percentage points according to the latest in a series of survey results released this week by the University of Johannesburg, together with the Human Science Research Council. Government is obviously concerned that this could spark a fourth wave and that it will not be able to meet its target of vaccinating at least 67% of the population by the end of the year. As one writer for The Guardian pointed out, vaccine rejection doesn't happen in a vacuum. Misinformation and conspiracy theories seem to be more compelling than actual facts and are spreading faster. According to the survey researchers, side effects and concerns that the vaccine will be ineffective are most common self-reported explanations for vaccine hesitancy. We've said it before, but one more time, the side effects are minimal compared to the enormous risk of getting the vaccine. Plus, theories that the vaccine was rushed is completely unfounded. So far, we're only seeing Limpopo making huge strides in its vaccine rollout, and its rather inspiring health MEC, Dr. Poppy Ramathuba. The province has the highest per capita vaccination rate in the country, and thanks to its tailor-made approach of reaching out to community through church leaders and traditional leaders, while also using existing service delivery platforms, providing 3,000 points of contacts to administer vaccines. The combination of winning hearts and minds has been working perfectly for the province. We hope it inspires other provinces to do the same. Up next is the big story. Fear engulfs Afghanistan as the Taliban takes over. Last week, we told you about the US's withdrawal from Afghanistan after 20 years of fighting off the Taliban in the country. The war has its roots in the infamous 9/11 attacks on the US, but the real history goes back even further than that. Since the last update and way before the US's official withdrawal on 31 August, the country has fallen to the Taliban with breathtaking speed. This is devastating because of the group's history of brutally repressing women, minority, and dissenters and providing a safe haven for Al-Qaeda. In the 20 years since they were ousted, women were able to go to school and university again and finally find work. Young people watch music and sports in stadiums where dissidents were once publicly executed. It's almost certain that this freedom is over. Families are destroying any books considered subversive. Girls hide their education diplomas and certificates. Traders are doing a brisk trade in burqas as women scramble to fit in with the Taliban's stifling idea of religion. As Vogue puts it, the Taliban have never been about Islamic principles. Rather, they have always operated by their own set of oppressive and barbaric rules. The US President Joe Biden was left facing anger from all quarters. He honored his predecessor's agreement with the Taliban to withdraw, even though they didn't keep up their part of the bargain. He and others assured the world that after 2 decades of training and billions of US taxpayer money, the Afghan army was ready to hold its own. They weren't. How did it happen so fast? The Taliban moved quickly and smartly, negotiating directly with regional leaders for control, pulling the rug out from under Ghani's administration. The army was demotivated, abandoned by their leaders, and the Taliban won ground. Cut off from their supplies and salaries, they were reluctant to fight. The Taliban took Kabul almost bloodlessly. They contacted everyone and offered them a chance to surrender or switch sides, with incentives including money and rewarding people with appointments afterward, said one expert. What's next for Afghanistan? The remnants of the anti-Taliban fighters in Afghanistan are currently holed up in the only province not taken by the Taliban, the Panjshir Valley. They are appealing to the West for help and are rumored to be in touch with the Taliban for a power-sharing agreement. Meanwhile, the Taliban has been all over international media, their message being clear that there will be peace and they will respect human rights. They will also allow children to go to school, protect media freedom, and there would be no retribution for those who partner with the US. But for now, reports from the ground are mixed. It's definitely a sad day for freedom. On to our briefs now, calling out celebs fake designer. A cheeky local Instagram account is exposing South African celebs for flaunting their fake designer labels. With just over 30 posts, Fake Gucci Community SA has racked up nearly 90,000 Instagram followers. And as the tagline puts it, I'm here to expose these designer wannabes. Stick with your Zara and H&M if you can't afford the real thing. Meow. Those receiving the heat include celebs like Somizi, Big Zulu, Sean Kize. Hilariously, some celebrities are now responding by producing receipts for their designer bling. Look, we hate the idea of publicly shaming anyone here at Explain, but we just had to chuckle at this. South Africans have zero chill. On to our next brief now, which is the finale of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. The final season of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture came to an end last week, and what a show it has been. We've watched the mighty fall, or just look plain ridiculous. Malusi Kigaba. Even former presidents couldn't evade its interrogation and ended up in jail trying to do so. The commission ran over 1,000 days, heard testimonies from over 200 witnesses, and cost around 1 billion rand. It's also received countless extensions as it grappled with its 1 exabyte of data as evidence. That's 1 billion gigabyte. It looked specifically at the damage wrought by the notorious Gupta family and their accomplices in government. As commentator Stephen Huertas pointed out recently, the impact of the commission has been enormous. It led in part to Ace Magashule and Gigaba's fall. Startling revelations at the commission became so normal that we forgot how incredible it is. It would have been unheard of in the Zuma era for high-profile politicians to be held accountable like this. To sweat on national TV and have their reputations destroyed for what they did. creating a proper disincentive for others to engage in corruption in the future. Of course, we'd also quite like to see actual prosecutions happen too. So, what next? Commission Chair Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo will compile a report for Ramaphosa with recommendations on what to do next, recover stolen funds and prosecute those involved. Enter the Hawks. Already, law enforcement agencies are using some of the evidence that emerged to... Ramaphosa will be obliged to release the report to the public, or he could face being petitioned to court to release it. Zondo has indicated that we must be prepared for the report being challenged in the courts, but as political analyst Ralph Mateja has pointed out, the report will have to be tightened up in such a way that its recommendations are clear, forthright, and do not leave room for questions that may require people to go to court to seek clarity. We'll keep you updated as the report progresses, but rest assured, the fact that the commission happened at all is a huge victory for accountability in South Africa. On to our next brief now. Johnson & Johnson has been accused of using colonial tactics in its partnership with Africa. We were so excited when Johnson & Johnson announced that it would be producing its single-dose vaccine in Gqeberha at Aspen facility in July. We believe that it signaled the end of vaccine apartheid, which saw the African continent left out of global vaccination drive. However, according to a New York Times expose, it looks like we've been taken for a ride. It turns out nearly 10 million vaccines already produced in Gqeberha have been siphoned out of the continent into Europe, making their way to Germany and Spain. Developed nations are accused of stockpiling vaccines, while countries like Uganda have only vaccinated 1.7 million of its population of 44 million. In July, the European Union announced it had already vaccinated over 70% of its population with at least one jab. Health activists on the continent accuse the pharmaceutical giant of using colonial tactics to trade with Africa. The issue is not just the purely extractive practice of these vaccine producers, but the secrecy involved in the contracts between health departments and the companies. If this information were readily available to all people, we could have pulled public pressure to resist exploitative practices. Activists have long fought this issue. In response to the outrage, Aspen has said that all vaccines produced in the fourth quarter of 2021 will be for African use. Marikana 9 years later. Monday marked 9 years since the Marikana massacre, that terrible day in 2012 when 34 mine workers at Lonmin's Marikana mine were shot and killed by police during a protest for increased wages. Every year since then, we've heard the same phrase, still no justice. This year was no different. The Socio-Economic Rights Institute says that to date, only 9 police officers have been charged and none has been charged for and prosecuted for the deaths of the mine workers. Many of those responsible still hold positions in government, while the families of the deceased still await closure and justice. Some families, desperate for any income, have had to send their children back into the mines, as New Frame reported. But we dare not let another year go without marking it. Once again, we say #Justice for Marikana. And a Springbok physio gets her hand on Messi. We couldn't resist this headline from the most recent edition of the Sunday Times. Local physiotherapist Verashni Pillay has hit career gold as far as we're concerned. She's joined the international soccer club PSG's medical team and will be working with, or shall we say working on, some of the world's top players, including new signing Lionel Messi and Neymar. Pillay worked as a physio in rugby for 15 years and worked alongside Box when they brought home the World Cup trophy in 2019. Speaking to Times Live ahead of her big move, she said, "It is these moments that physiotherapy room that I cherish the most. When the small gains were made, when an injury started to heal, when you can see that a previously injured player is now going to be available for the next game. Good luck, Tanushri. Tell Lionel we said hi." And Parliament has a new speaker, but very few people are celebrating. South Africa's new parliamentary speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, and wow, lots of people are furious about it. The former defense minister who bungled the handling of the recent looting and is mired in scandal was sworn into the powerful position today. The ANC's majority got her there, though the opposition DA put up its own candidate in a largely symbolic move. As we mentioned last week, in this position, Mapisa-Nqakula will preside over an investigation into her time as minister by a parliamentary committee that is set to finalize its investigations by the end of August. The Joint Standing Committee on Defense is investigating Mapisa-Nqakula for allegedly receiving 5 million rand bribe from a defense contractor, blowing 7 million rand on aircraft charters, and living it up at luxury hotels. Last week, we told you about 5 million rand in cash and gifts from a service provider to the Ministry of Defense and Military Veterans. This week's new details make her appointment look even more worse. At least the matter is public and being investigated, though. We'll watch the release of the committee's report with a keen eye and let you know how Mapisa-Nqakula handles it from the Speaker's chair. And on to adulting. A smile or sigh for your license renewal. In a rare plus side of the pandemic for those of us who hate paperwork, there's been a long reprieve on the renewing of expired driver's licenses. But the grace period is nearly over, and you have until the 31st of August to renew your driving license if it expired between 26 March 2020 and the 1st of December 2020. If it expired any time before or after this date range, you will need to apply for a new card. Due to the inefficient system and huge national backlog, the DA and motoring groups are lobbying for the expiration date to be extended. In case they're not successful, we suggest you get cracking before the month ends. And October school holiday may be scrapped. The pandemic has drastically delayed the 2021 school year, and everyone is scrambling to make up for lost time. The Department of Education has proposed scrapping the October holidays, from the 1st to the 11th of October, as a way to buy extra classroom time. Discussions are still underway, and we will let you know as soon as the outcome is made public. And finally, democracy wins in Zimbabwe. Last week we and most others predicted that Zambia's general election would end in a deadlock with incumbent Edgar Lungu back in power. That's the script for many African countries struggling with democracy, right? Well, opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema landed 2.8 million votes, netting him one of the biggest ever electoral wins in Zambia's history, and leaving Lungu with 1.8 million votes in the dust. Initially, it seemed Lungu might not accept the results, but he handed over reins quietly and said we would work for a peaceful transfer of power. A welcome but surprising turn for the books, since Hichilema was arrested several times and jailed for treason under Lungu's government. The new president says he will not seek revenge or retribution. These sorts of victories are fast becoming the norm in Africa. The Economist reports that there has been 32 powerful peaceful changes of power in Africa since 2015. Here's to many more. That's it from us, an award-winning product of explain.co.za, simple news for busy people. Remember to share the love and tell your friends to sign up for updates at www.explain.co.za.coza. Till next time, goodbye from the team.